Good afternoon. It's strange to live in New York and go to a conference hosted by a German media company and feel like you're coming home. I'm just such a huge fan of Steffi and Dr. Callan and the team, so thanks again for hosting me. So the title of my talk, the last question that Henry had was, who's going to win? And I think it's often interesting because of these conferences, we spend a lot of time talking about the winners, but I think it's often more interesting to talk about the losers. And in a low-growth economy where we only have 2% GDP growth, any company that's growing faster than 2%, there's someone on the losing end of that. At NYU in 2009, we developed an algorithm to look at 850 data points across the 100 biggest brands in the world. Because of Moore's Law, scraping technology, we are now tracking 5,000 brands across the 11 biggest markets in the world. We then sit down with the brands and tell them where they're strong and weak relative to their competitive set. And the effect is we've become modern-day train spotters or bird watchers in that we see patterns. We see where the biggest brands and retailers are investing, what technologies, what platforms, and what they're not investing in. And we have a sense for who we think is winning or losing in the ecosystem. And every year we sit down with our brands, we ask them to pick a market, a geography, a business sector, a group of stocks, and we give them opinion on who is accreting value and who is losing value. And we affectionately call it 0 or 1, winners and losers in a digital age. Some fine print, when we say winners, we don't mean the game is over. We mean that we think that the value of that organization is going to increase over the next 24 months. And losers just means that we think from this moment in time, your value is going to decrease. So with the fine print, we're looking at 3 sectors today: social media winners and losers in retail, and winners and losers in broader society in general because of some digital innovation that's taking place and reshaping the world. We think the web's seminal driving force right now around social media is the transition from text to visual-based mediums. We've been listening to words for thousands of years, reading words for hundreds of years, but we've been absorbing imagery as a communication vehicle for millions of years. As a species, we are very good at interpreting information through images. We absorb images 50 times faster. Brands and organizations are starting to figure this out, and they're making their websites less text-based and more image-based because they speak to your heart and they inspire action in a more fluid way than text. We're seeing this in Google and Twitter trying to become more image-based. We're seeing this is why print is still a fantastic business because it speaks to our heart with very strong imagery, and we're starting to see it in store, and we're starting to see it online, specifically with great platforms, including Instagram, our first winner. We believe Instagram, within 24 months, will be the most powerful social media platform in the world. This is the Instagram page of a great little brand called Benefit. Immediately you understand the product. It's eyelash mascara. It gives you a sense of the appeal of the product, an emotional connection to the product. If you look at an axiom around what we believe is going to be the most powerful platforms in the world, it's 2 primary drivers. It's an access of who was born on a mobile device and understands how to deliver content to you on a small screen, and also who's the most visual. We think the combination of those two, the winners go to Instagram, WeChat, KakaoTalk, and Line. We believe Instagram may already be the most powerful platform in the world. It's now grown, this is outdated, it's grown to 200 million users. But if you look at its growth, it's growing faster than any other social media platform in the world right now. When you look at the social in social media, you'd have to measure engagement rate as registered by this percentage of the community that likes, shares, or comments on a piece of content. By the way, I know how fast I'm speaking, but I have 60 slides in 15 minutes. If you look at the size of a community times the engagement rate, Instagram has 15 times the engagement rate of Facebook and 25 times the engagement rate of Twitter. If you take those two as a power index, Instagram is already the most powerful platform in the world. We believe the other big winner is going to be WeChat. WeChat may be the first brand to come out of China that may be a global brand. It's a top 10 download in 43 markets. Kind of strange that the second largest economy does not have a global brand yet. We believe this could be the first. We're also seeing a loser in China, and that is the former leader, Sina Weibao's decline is almost perfectly inversely correlated to the rise of WeChat. So there are losers when we start talking about winners. So let's talk about some of the losers. Again, great companies, we just feel that they're going to be worth less than they are right now over the next 24 months. We think Pinterest has been blown by and practically run off the road by Instagram. Instagram now has triple the community size of Pinterest. 2/3 of Instagram users are on the platform every day versus less than a quarter on Pinterest. Pinterest own the visual web. They have ceded control. They have abdicated a leadership position to Instagram. Twitter is trying to go visual. It's taking too long, and they're beginning to pay the price for it, we believe. We do an analysis of the 5,000 brands we track, look at the percentage of traffic these brands are getting from various social media platforms and break it down. The lower right-hand bar is the percentage of traffic the 5,000 brands we track in these markets is getting from Twitter. As you can see, the amount of traffic that is actually going to the people who would likely be their advertisers is pretty minimal. IBM tracks 100 e-commerce sites in Black Friday and could not discern a statistically meaningful amount of traffic that converted to actual purchase. In other words, the traffic coming out of Twitter is almost meaningless on an economic level to the biggest advertisers and retailers in the world. The number of advertisers on Twitter is actually less than the platforms of the brands we track. LinkedIn has more relationships with advertisers than Twitter at this point. Another loser, Tumblr. We believe that Instagram is the best acquisition of the last 5 years, and Tumblr is the worst. Both were paid, both cost about $1 billion, both have the same user base. Instagram will do between $250 million and $450 million this year. Tumblr was noticeably absent from Yahoo's earnings call, which means that likely the revenue is somewhat negligible. Some of the winners in retail. First off, an obvious one, Amazon. Amazon is reshaping how value is signaled in retail, things like operational, returns, exchanges, pick up in store. When retailers are asked what they think consumers value or what consumers want from them, they think it's deals and promotions and merchandising-based incentives. It's not. Consumers want same-day delivery. They want the ability to pull out their smartphone and look at aisle-level SKU data. They want to pull up their loyalty program in the store. Operational things that Amazon has taught them to expect that are massively expecting. Amazon is teaching the whole world how to shop, and unfortunately it's very expensive, and it's a great strategy for them because they have had the lowest cost of capital of any company in the world. They never got into the habit of giving their investors the crack cocaine of profit. They have been spewing them a steady dose of methadone in the form of a big vision. No company has ever had access to this cheap a capital for this long, and they are taking advantage of it, tapping into what consumers want and value in an area that is massively expensive. Or put another way, they are going underwater into the world of fulfillment, which is very expensive, with the largest oxygen tank, forcing every other retailer to follow them, but everyone else is following with a smaller oxygen tank and will begin drowning. 75% of their operating expenses is in fulfillment and technology. We've never had a retailer spend half of that. They are absolutely going to where the puck is, and they're convincing consumers that that's what they should differentiate their purchases on. If you look at where Amazon used to build warehouses, it used to be in low-cost areas. Where they've built warehouses in the last 24 months is right outside urban centers. It's clear they're trying to get you 50% of everything you need to 50% of households within 4 hours. When Amazon is in your house every day or every week with Amazon Fresh, their grocery application, they know what you want and they begin sending you products before you even ask for them. They effectively become the cable pipe of stuff into your house. And instead of delivering 0 and 1s, they're going to deliver atoms. Just as your cable pipe has tremendous command and power into your household of all media, Amazon is building the same power into your household of stuff, a huge winner. Some of the ancillary revenue streams are developed because of their dominance. They are becoming a huge media company. They'll do about $1 billion just selling media this year, so they'll likely be as big or potentially bigger than Twitter if they maintain the growth of Amazon Media Group in the next 2 years. And we have never seen a retailer muscle big brands around the way that Amazon is right now. Estee Lauder and LVMH have a zero engagement policy with Amazon, meaning they will not talk to them, they will not advertise, they will not officially distribute their products. We scrape for all the product SKU level data off of Amazon, and what do you know? LVMH and Estee Lauder have some of the broadest product selection of their SKUs on the platform. Amazon says to Burberry, come distribute officially through us. Burberry puts up 15 SKUs officially on their luxury beauty store, and magically the thousands of diverted or counterfeit products disappear. L'Oreal begins advertising on Amazon, and all of a sudden all the bad imagery and bad pricing around the Kiehl's products magically disappears. Amazon has become the Tony Soprano of e-commerce. You either pay to play or you get hurt on their platform. Who gets hurt? People think Amazon is putting bricks and mortar out of business. That is absolutely not true. Department stores were supposed to go out of business. They've ceded share 9 of the last 10 years. Don't tell the shareholders of Macys or Nordstrom's that, who have recently enjoyed all-time highs in their stock. Great digital IQ stocks, including Tiffany and Williams-Sonoma and Sephora, are at all-time highs. Sephora is now the driving growth force, and LVMH has replaced Vuitton as the growth vehicle. 93% of all retail is still done in stores. We tend to size our investment around digital, around the size of the e-commerce business. You're missing the point. You should size your e-commerce or your digital investment around the size of your total business. Mobile commerce will only be $30 billion in 3 years. That's a pimple on the retail elephant, but it will influence $750 billion in sales. The return on investment in great digital is recognized in that very ugly thing called bricks and mortar. Stores are where we are going to recognize the return on investment in great digital. Macys is responding, turning 380 of their stores into mini warehouses to compete with Amazon with same-day delivery. Sephora, probably the best multi-channel experience from a digital perspective. You can set up a reservation on your phone. It smells your IP address when you walk by and sends you a text message asking you to come in for a free makeover. When you're in the store, you can set up, you can look at your loyalty program and see how many points you have, scan a QR code to see user reviews. Some of the losers in retail. People think that bricks and mortar loses from Amazon. No. Who's losing because of Amazon? Other e-commerce players. I think these are great companies. I just don't think they have the scale online to compete with Amazon. And I think slowly but surely Amazon is sucking the oxygen out of the room for every other e-commerce player. And over time, their value is going to decline if they are not bought by Amazon. The other big losers are retailers and brands with weak digital. Hermes, like a lot of family-controlled companies in Europe and luxury, is just sort of hoping the internet is going to go away. Target outsourced, Target and Toys R Us outsourced their digital, leaving the confidence to outsiders, so they ended up with an undifferentiated and expensive product, and it's come back to haunt them. Prada's website stays perfectly static the last 2 weeks of August. I would speculate that that is when Muciana Prada is in the south of France. Let's talk about society, who wins in a digital age. There's some real victories here. The abject poor are declining at a rate we didn't anticipate. The World Health Organization thought the abject poor was going to take 40 years to be cut in half. It only took 20. We think we're going to cut it in half again over the next 10 years because of basic vaccination, food distribution, and GPS and communications technology. This is arguably the biggest victory in our society over the last 50 years. Other winners: the middle class in emerging markets, or what we call consumers, people who just have enough money to start buying things beyond basic shelter and food. This was only a third of our global population just 5 years ago, and it's about to flip to 2/3. And companies like P&G and Unilever that have exposure to the middle class in these markets are going to boom. This is a huge victory and a very exciting time to be a brand that caters to the middle class in emerging markets. Who are the losers? Easily the middle class in developed markets. There's this thing called the myth of progress, that the rising tide lifts all boats. What we have is a tide of very choppy waters raising that's created a set of super mega yachts, and everybody else is struggling to stay afloat. Unilever created $700,000 in market cap per employee, Intel 1.2 million, 21 million at Facebook. This is fantastic if you work at Facebook, great if you own real estate in San Francisco or the Ferrari dealership in Palo Alto, but it's bad for society. Jobs are being destroyed at a rate we can't replace them. People will say, well, the Luddites said the same thing. 4% of the population is in agriculture. Was it 40% at the beginning of the year? New industries pop up. The question is, what's happening? And employment is going down, but effectively you have this effect, what I call the iPad effect, where Estee Lauder is reporting that people convert to purchase at a Macys at a greater rate if they begin interacting with their Clinique application on their iPad versus a sales associate. So sales associates are being fired. These people make $40,000 to $80,000, and that job is bifurcating to either a $120,000 systems application engineer at Apple or a $19 a day assembler in Guangzhou, China. So the middle class is getting hammered. These are the jobs in the middle. These are wages. This is where people are losing jobs. This is where people are gaining jobs. As you can see, across the middle paying jobs, this is where the job loss is taking place. There is some great job growth in high-paying jobs around technology, but the majority of job growth where these people are being arbed or arbitraged down to are low-paying jobs in the services industry and retail industry, where they have less flexible hours, less security, and most likely no insurance. People will say, well, income inequality is part of capitalism, and it's a good thing. But once we get to the income inequality that we're experiencing here, it is a bad thing. Once the bottom fifth comes totally out of whack with the top fifth, infant mortality goes up, life expectancy goes down. This is one of the pieces of data I found last night as I was thinking about this that I found really, really rattles you. This is the resting diastolic blood pressure of kids in middle-class households versus houses in poverty while they're sleeping. And this is the level of stress hormones in a 9-year-old in houses in poverty versus middle income. So even at an age as early as 9, you see kids suffering from this type of income inequality. I love this photo. I pulled this off of the Business Insider, which is my first read every morning. It's a kid waiting, sitting in the sun, basking in the sun while his parents are in a line at a food bank. It's taken in Los Angeles. Got to do a man in the mirror test. What is causing this? Education used to be the lubricant of upward mobility. My industry has done a terrible job. We've become the sand in the gears for upward mobility. It cost me $4,000 in total tuition to go to UCLA as an undergrad, and then $4,000 total tuition to go to Berkeley for business school. It's now somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000 for each of those institutions. In addition, and largely that's been fomented by this failed system of tenure that doesn't punish irrelevance among my colleagues. In addition, campuses have become so horny for revenue that they're taking in many more foreign students who pay full freight who aren't eligible for financial aid, so we have fewer and fewer seats for kids domestically. The result is the kids with the same skills you had 25 years ago in the US pay 5 times as much for a degree from a much lesser institution. The biggest victory in the history of the US was a middle class that was better than everybody else's. This has been the most positive force on the planet economically. But we can no longer boast that our middle class is better than yours. The average household income of the middle class in Canada just passed the US, and as you can see, other developed nations are beginning to narrow the gap. We are losing what has been arguably our greatest advantage and greatest pride as a nation. Income inequality is out of control. The top 10% now control 75% of all assets in the US. People talk about the top 1%. They're missing the boat. The top 1%, the 99 to 99.9, are actually about the same in terms of the amount of assets they've controlled for the last 40 or 50 years. But once you get to the 0.1%, you start to see they've gone from 6% to about 12. They doubled. But then we go to the 0.01%, and that's where things get really crazy. The top 1 in 10,000 income earners or asset holders have gone from controlling about 3% of the nation's assets to approximately 12%, or their share has grown 300% in the last 40 years. It's not rich against poor, it's uber wealthy against everybody else at this point. Big money in politics is fueling this downward cycle. You can now buy a state in a primary election. South Carolina costs $5 million. It costs $10 million to go into Mitt Romney's campaign in Florida to put him over the edge. This is an incredible value. There are only 5 business schools that have not been named. The Booth School was the last one to be named. It cost $300 million. You could probably put somebody of the top 5 candidates in the White House for $250 million, or put another way, it's cheaper to put your name on the White House in 2016 than on Columbia's business school. The descendants of the Walmart family, the Walton kids, now control more wealth than the bottom 40% of US households. This has created what I would refer to as an upward spiral downward. Between the explosion in wealth of the top 0.1%, dark pools of money being able to influence politics through the Citizens United ruling, and then cronyism on steroids in the form of what we call the US tax code, where we talk about the American dream. The largest tax deduction is the interest on your house. That's nothing but a transfer of wealth from people who rent, lower and middle class, to upper middle class and higher income earners who own their houses. Capital gains, the other big tax cut. The lower 50%, the lower medium of the U.S. population only owns 8% of the stock, so again, another wealth transfer from the middle class to the upper class. This is a bipartisan effort. The Affordable Care Act charges young people $400 for $300 worth of health care, and old people $400 for $700 of health care, so again, another income transfer between young people trying to make their way versus old people who tend to have more wealth. And if you work at Sotheby's and you're an auctioneer, you get paid on commission. If you buy a piece of art for $1 million and you sell it for $2 million, you get a commission on that. That commission is taxed at ordinary income. Dan Loeb invests $100 million in Sotheby's. If he sells his stock for $200 million, the commission on his gain is taxed in something called capital gains on carried interest. He pays a lower tax rate. We've changed the vocabulary. We call commissions for venture capitalists and alternative investment managers long-term capital gains or carried interest, whereas we call commissions for middle-class people just commissions that they have to pay ordinary income on. This has become the upward spiral. The downward spiral has been ossified in our country through a combination of cronyism, tax policy, and technology that is creating massive wealth among among the people who own the factory versus those who work in it. Bonus round, first $1 trillion market cap firm in the next 18 months. Amazon has made good use of its cheap access to capital, trades at 56 times EBITDA. However, the best neighborhood in the world is luxury. You want to be in a business that leads with your heart, not your head. It results in irrational wants and needs, which translates to large margins. The investment community has recognized this. Estee Lauder has a larger market cap than the guy from WPP who was up here. Richemont has a larger market cap now. The guys who make Panerai, Cartier, and Van Cleef & Arpels have a larger market cap than Deutsche Telekom. Michael Kors has a larger market cap of the $12 or $13 billion in Tiffany and Abercrombie combined. However, Apple is the best house, the best brand in the world in a bad neighborhood. People lead with their heads when they're talking about tech, which is a terrible business to be in because if you don't reinvent it every year, your stock gets hammered. A terrible real estate strategy and a terrible stock strategy is to be the best house in a bad neighborhood. So I think what you're going to see is that the board of Apple has decided they would be ignoring their fiduciary duty not to get into the business of luxury. They need to transition the best house, the best brand in the world into the best neighborhood. Just by making that transition with the same level of profitability, they will take their multiple up from 8 to probably 12 or 13, and you will have the first $1 trillion market cap company. There's evidence they are already doing this. Today was Angela Aaron's first day. The press release said she was going to run stores. That is the biggest head fake in corporate America. She is not moving from London and making $21 million to go run stores in Cupertino. Anybody been to Cupertino? I've been on boards of public companies trying to recruit CEOs. I would speculate the conversation went something like this. Apple is about to become the next great iconic luxury brand. The market is going to recognize us for this, give us a greater multiple on EBITDA that reflects how strong our brand is, and we are going to be the first $1 trillion market cap company, and we want you to lead that. There is other evidence. People don't talk about Paul Deneuve, who joined Apple a year ago. Paul Deneuve was the CEO of YSL, Yves Saint Laurent. He is not designing the next iPad or working on iTunes. LVMH, Kering Group, Prada, here comes Apple. Let's review. In social platforms, the winners, Instagram and WeChat. The losers, Tumblr, Pinterest, Twitter, and Foursquare. In retail, the winners are Amazon and great multi-channel retailers with great digital. The losers are any e-commerce firm other than Amazon and retailers and brands that have weak digital. In society, some big winners, the abject poor and the middle class in emerging markets. Big loser, the middle class in developed markets. My name's Scott Galloway. I teach at NYU. I run a company called L2, and I appreciate your time.